fuck up, but it looked really good.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what. Did you get to see the graphic I put together for your op-ed?
Oh, I love it.
Okay.
I love it. Yeah.
Okay. I think we'll go with it. I suspect we're going to put it in Monday.
Okay. Yeah, I was really struggling with the imagery for that because I was trying to get to the heart of the matter, which is the disparity between, I would say, the haves and the have-nots, but that's not really what it is. It's the disparity between the acceptance of discord and sadness compared to the excitement of really good things that are happening. And I'm increasingly disturbed by it. I really am.
Yeah, well, when I saw JJ's video of what was happening at Market and Golden Gate, I was absolutely appalled.
Right?
You know, that's height of COVID level stuff. And
100%.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be going on just because it's 3:00 in the morning.
Well, it's crazy. I call it the 6 to 6 because it's, when the sun goes down and then it, before it comes up, that's when it all starts to happen. And I've never seen anything like it. I really haven't. And it, I hate to say this, but it is worse. It's worse. I'm seeing the incredulous looks on people's faces when they say, "Oh, I thought San Francisco was getting better." I'm like, yes, some of it, some of it is. It's true. The other truth is that it's. A client of mine was in town from New York, and he was shocked. I mean, this is like we actually start to get used to it after a while. He's like, he lives in Midtown. He's like, I've never seen anything like that in my entire life, because he had left a work event that ended pretty late. So he was for the Tenderloin kind of mid-market area at around 11 p.m. And yeah, it's really, 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 really shocking how bad it has become. So sad. It's just so sad.
Yeah, I just tend to think that there's a continuing institutional bias against trying to enforce anything or change anything in the what they used to call the combat zone, and which is the Tenderloin and 6th Street, and you combine that with the fact that COVID allowed it to balloon out of 6th Street and the Tenderloin, or get worse to the point where it's incredibly obvious when you go through that stretch of Market Street. And I think the cops and the institutions just get inured to it, and obviously it doesn't help that there are people inside HSH that have the same, and DPH that have the same outlook as Jenny Exotic and Kristen Bookworm, and just aren't they aren't. I mean, there's only so much you can do when those people are actually credentialed employees inside the departments.
That's right.
I mean, it's one thing to not renew the term or not renew the term of commissioners. It's another to it's a much longer process to weed that thinking out of the departments.
I agree, and but I think it's not just it's a tolerance that they've developed a tolerance for it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They're inured to it.
Yeah, as in, right, this is just the way it is. And we've been around the city for long enough to know there's a difference between gritty and some blight, some squalor, some issues, and what we have right
now. Exactly.
So I really take umbrage with the whole, well, it's, this is just the way it always was. Nope. So, yeah, it's been tough. It's been tough to see that. And I'm a little bit baffled by these supervisors who you're looking at Dorsey and you're looking at Bilal, who have these areas. There's not that many mentions about, I'm not seeing the fist pounding on the table going, I won't stand for this. I can't take this. And I see a lot more excitement, like we're doing this, we've got a new store or whatever, but I don't know. Maybe I'm not being articulate right now, but I'm just a little bit shocked about.
Well, I think what's happening right now is the mayor especially is doing everything they can to sort of pop what growth there is, to call it, to showcase that growth, because he figures people, that's what's really needed to prime the pump. It's one thing to enforce, and it's another to showcase what growth and activity is happening there.
Mm-hmm. But I'm waiting for that growth to take hold in these areas. Like, I'm not seeing it, Mike. I'm not seeing the excitement and the thrill and the new businesses and new housing, new energy in these affected areas. Seeing it in others, which is wonderful. Wow, we can totally celebrate that. But I'm waiting for it to bring everybody else up. Hello.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's just it. You've got to be able to. You have to enforce the problem areas. The problem areas aren't going to see growth until they're not going to see any population or growth until you enforce.
Right.
And I think right now, the city is going up against the bureaucratic resistance to that. I suspect that's what's really happening.
Right. Yeah.
So
you're correct. It's a very big monster to slay.
Yeah.
I think maybe that's also part of the problem, is that it's when something is so big, you kind of turn to those things that you can do. You can open up a cute little restaurant in Nob Hill,
mm-hmm.
and do those things, right? And you can feel, and rightfully so, feel good about it. It's tackling the bigger issues that it feels insurmountable. And so,
what part of Nob Hill do you live on, may I ask? Hi, did you catch my last question?
No, you totally went out.
What part of Nob Hill do you live on?
I'm on Hyde and Jackson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, beautiful, and our neighborhood has gotten better and better and better. And it was good before. So
yeah, when I lived on Nob Hill, I was in the 800 block of Bush Street, right next to the fire house. That is, where the Galleria is, and I'm trying to remember which north-south street that is. It's like Bush and Leavenworth.
Oh yeah.
And this is back in the 80s when I lived there, and it had its share of griminess to it, but in general, you would not see these sorts of things until you went down the hill into the bowl of the Tenderloin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And coming back here, when I first came back here in the 90s, it sort of felt the same. Then it started getting worse, to the point where one evening I would meet friends at Chelsea Place in the middle of the night, and some dude would be leaning against the wall, urinating, and not urinating against the wall, urinating on the other side towards the sidewalk, like he was projecting like an artillery piece or something. And I'm going, okay, I have to cross the street now. It's that kind of stuff.
You're in a beautiful neighborhood in North Beach. I love North Beach. I think that North Beach is improving, about the same, or going backwards. Do you have any sense?
I think it's fluctuated. I think during COVID it was really bad, because I have this this alley that's right next to my building, and we would have people hanging out there all the time. doing drugs and trying to sleep and, coughing themselves out while they're sleeping. That's gone away. And ironically, what's also happened is that I think Randy Shaw has taken over the building next to me and is going to turn it into permanent supportive housing.
Oh, are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I live in Mesa, San Francisco, which is the bottom of Telegraph Hill, next to where the Safeway used to be and where the Trader Joe's is. And when I first moved there, the public housing that was there in North Beach Place was in terrible shape because they had not renovated it since they moved people in at the end of the war. And it was basically these concrete blocks with open parking lots and courtyards where nothing but drug dealing would take place. I mean, I would walk into the restaurant space that's in the first floor of my building, and the drug dealers would be right there counting their money on the table. And that went away. And one of the things that made it go away was the rebuilding of North Beach Place into the current affordable housing model. And, plus it's got retail like the Trader Joe's. So I think that's been a major stabilizer in the neighborhood. But you go a couple of blocks down to like North Point or Bay Street, we've got, the bar Ginsberg is no longer there. Someone's been trying to build a hotel there for the past few years, and I think the work has only just started. Caesar's is gone. I don't know if you remember Caesar's restaurant. That was like an old stall.
Yes.
Best ribeye in the city. I don't know about anything else because I never ate anything there except the ribeye. So you've got a little bit of scratch there, which will probably go away when the discount grocery opens up again.
Oh yeah, when is that opening?
It's supposed to be happening in the next couple of months.
So what, you think matters are going to get worse when that opens?
No, I think it's going to get better.
Oh.
Simply because there'll be more activity in the parking garage and more people coming back to the area.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll that day when that store closed, it was.
Forrest, how you doing? Let me get Forrest.
Good morning. I may or may not have logged in with my alt account just now. Hopefully no one noticed.
Excellent. Yeah, it looks like I've got you on as a speaker, so we're all set.
Great.
Morning, Forrest.
Good morning, Erica. How are you?
Doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome.
Good.
I'm actually going to have like a very SF day. I'm going to go to brunch after this, and then I'm going to see Suffs. I don't know if you guys have heard of that before.
What is it?
Mm-hmm.
It's a musical about the women's suffrage movement.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's the last showing in SF.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I look forward to hearing about it.
Yeah, it's going to be sick. It's a weird performing arts week. Like, I'm going to the Monkey King opening night at the opera on Friday.
So you're going totally out. Mike, can you hear Forrest?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's like it feels like you stepped away from the mic for a minute.
Really? But the mic is in my ear.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's different but better.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay, that's weird. Yeah, I'm just like an SF, lurie dilettante now filming these shows.
That's cool. I went to see Aura at Grace Cathedral.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't like it. Yeah. I'm kind of struggling with, can I do a review? How do I do a review on that? I don't want to be mean, but it was just not to my taste, as we were taught to say.
Totally. Is Liz going to join us? Because Liz actually went to all the trials, right?
Yes.
I feel like
yeah. We're gonna have Susan and Liz talking about the trials, and I see Susan on here right now. So let me.
Hello.
Susan, good morning.
Hello.
Perfect.
Hi.
Hello. Hello.
You see that article that dropped on Judge Susan Tong? Like, holy shit.
No, where or what?
It was in a Standard. She's just apparently lost her mind.
What happened? No.
She, she's just one of those lefties, one of these super far progressives.
So what was she upset about?
No, she wasn't upset. Like, they just showed how, like, a decision she made basically led to a child being kidnapped.
Oh,
what?
Yeah. I'm going to send it to you both, Mike and Susan. I don't have your number. Erica, what's your phone number?
Oh, you mean Michelle Tong?
Yeah, sorry. Michelle Tong. Sorry.
5613-8354.
Wait, 5613...
8354.
Thanks. Wait, 561...
Sorry.
What? That's
You guys, DM or text.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's all right.
I'm going to DM you right now, Erica.
All right.
Sorry about that.
All right.
Yeah, so this is the whole. I'm actually reading about this in the Daily Journal, where Jenkins basically just disqualified Tong from criminal hearings based on her past.
Sorry.
And
she's like the Jane Kim of judges.
Right. And there's a letter defending her from Ellen Chaitin, of course. I don't know if you know who that is. Yes. There's a long story behind that. But she's a former judge.
No.
Ellen Chaitin was one of the first politically active attorneys to campaign for and get elected to judge against either for an open seat or, she ran first against a sitting judge, which at the time was kind of considered kind of politically outre. And then she didn't win, but then she ran for an open seat against, a bunch of other fellow attorneys. And there was like a scandal over the amount of money that being spent in the race. And I think she got elected in that race. She's married to V. Roy Lefcourt, who had a reputation for aggressive litigation when he was he was like a deputy chief public defender for a while under Jeff Brown. And then he also ran for judge, and, his reputation preceded him, and he got shellacked. This is all in the early 2000s or the 90s. But Ellen Chaitin and V. Roy and, a bunch of other former judges have been pretty. They will get, every time there's an attack, every time there's a political attack on the judiciary, they trot out all of these people to say, you're going to turn us into Texas or something on that order.
I remember going to the last, debate when they had a bunch of judge seats open in the Golden Gate Park, and it was 10 or 12 people, and 10 of the 12 were public defenders.
Yeah, that happened in the 2010s.
Yeah, I think this was more recently, actually. This was probably like 2000, and I want to say, really? Yeah, like 2019. It may have been, there was like 10 or 12 people there, and I think there was 5 or 6 seats available. But everybody on the stage except 2 were public defenders, and I can't remember who the other not public defender was, but the one of the people that wasn't a public defender was really, I don't know who she was, but she was just quite a character, let's just say. But I just remember sitting there and thinking, oh man, we're screwed.
I've forgotten her name, but she was the Iranian American woman who she had actually worked as a judge pro tem and then was running for a full-time judge seat.
Yeah, the one that was not a public defender of the 2 that was. I couldn't remember the one, but the one was a tall Asian woman. She was, she seemed competent, but definitely was, the only, her and then the one I can't remember were the only ones that were not former public defenders. And as I remember, all of the 4 or 5 seats available went to the public defenders.
me see if I can look up, because when I was at the Bay City Beacon, I covered this election cycle, and it was basically like 5 different deputy public defender. Yeah, this is 2018.
Yeah, 2018. Yeah.
So you had Nikki Solis,
Yep.
Maloof, Phoenix Streets. Solis, Maloof, and Maria Evangelista were competent, deputy public defenders, really competent lawyers all around. Phoenix Streets was a little sketchy, more political than legal, and they were running against a bunch of incumbent judges. And the other challenger was Elizabeth Zare. She was a pro tem judge, an appeals board commissioner, and she was running specifically against this one judge, and it just seemed like some kind of personal thing was there.
Yeah, it was a very strange debate,
But the whole issue there, I think, in many ways, started from when another deputy public defender was heavily sanctioned by another judge. Neither of these ended up being involved in the race at all, but it was an uproar at the office. And it just seems like every time the bear gets poked at the public defender's office, one or more of them runs for judge to shake the tree at the Superior Court, remind them that they're supposed to be compliant, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's basically what happened here in a big way, because they ran against like 4 different incumbent judges, 4 different incumbent judges, none of which were either, particularly political or bad judges. And, fortunately they lost. Although when one of them retired, Maria Evangelista was appointed to a bench position some months.
Well, it's interesting because the story that Forrest is referencing is about a family court judge. And I mean, stuff happens in family court, all the time that's off the rails. It's not a specialty of mine, but I have covered cases and been in court, and I've been with a friend who had to go through that system in San Francisco, and it is off the rails. But it's absolutely, tame compared to what happens in things like mental health court and the drug court and, all of these alternative courts and in general, just what happens in the criminal system. And that's something that, I can't say much right now, but I'm working on a huge story that involves the Troy McAllister case, following it back to, I can't go into it quite yet, but just say it's going to blow things up as far as how these people get released back out into the society, and then are left out in society despite continually being arrested again. And it will scare you to think about even walking down the street, frankly.
Oh my God. Well,
it's bad.
We'll be waiting for that one, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's bad, and it's going to take some time because I'm working with a crew of people who basically approached me with some pretty hardcore stuff, and let's just say it's documented. There's evidence. It goes all the way to Sacramento, and probably not great timing for Gavin Newsom, to be honest. Yeah, it's ugly stuff, and it definitely will show you how far the crazy train goes to allowing these repeat felons to just wander in the streets and commit crimes over and over and over and over. And it also goes back to the whole crime is down. You're going to see why, quote, crime is down. It doesn't have anything to do with crime actually being down. Let's just put it that way.
Oh boy, sounds good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I gotta tell you, it's
very exciting.
Yeah, that does sound exciting for that to come out.
And it just all happened because, and this goes to show the power of the voice and of social media. This all happened because someone scrolling through X saw my article about Hanako Abe, and it all of a sudden this person said, "Oh my Lord, that's that case." And then they reached out to me, and then the next thing I know, we're having a Zoom, my time 2 a.m. with Hiroko Abe, Hanako's mother, from Japan, with a translator. And yeah, it's big, and yeah. So we'll, I'll let you know as we get closer, but it's, hopefully before the end of the year.
Excellent. So actually, it's 11:04 right now, so I just want to do the usual beginning announcement, which is welcome to the Sunday Brunch Space at the Voice of San Francisco. Today we've got Susan Dyer Reynolds, our editorial director, talking about her coverage of courts. We've got Liz Lay going to be talking about recent decisions that have in one or two particular cases that have been on the public mind for a while. We've got Forrest Liu here talking about what's the impact is going to be on Asian American community and what they see, what needs to be done, etc. And I and Erica Sandberg will be chiming in with opinions from every now and then. And I think once we get all that out of the way, if we do it in enough time, we may have some other people chime in to see what their perspectives are on this, because it looks like we've got a lot of people who have logged in. So Liz, can you tell us about what you saw this past week and a half with these court decisions?
Yes, happy to. So there was Troy McAllister with Hanako Abe, where a large swath of the Asian American community, civic leaders who we called Boudin, showed up in court, also tons of media, which before 9 a.m., people noticed that Judge Begert was poking his head out of his courtroom, checking to see who has shown up, is there a lot of media, and he did it 3 times. So there's definitely that impact, we believe, on what he decided, which was in the courtroom was particularly interesting because the deputy defender was asking Judge Begert to basically sever the DUI charge from the other remaining counts so that he could be qualified for diversion, which is illegal per se, but within the ability of Judge Begert to be able to allow. But with all the light shining, I think he was particularly keen on denying that request. The ADA that was arguing for Hanako's case was not Courtney Bell. It was actually another DA, which seemed to understand the case well from a law perspective, but didn't referred to Hanako and Elizabeth as Hanako as Mr. Abe, which kind of really
my Lord,
implied that there wasn't as much fluidity and knowledge of the case, such a prominent case.
It seems to me that they need to do. I hope they do a better job of prepping when when these cases like this get in front of a jury, if they ever do.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm concerned about Courtney Bell. I've made that known in my articles because this is the ADA who lost what I thought was a slam dunk case with the Garrett Doty case. We're going to have an update on his buddy, by the way, coming up. The other guy that was harassing and torturing people, throughout the marina for years. And to me, I mean, again, if he had prosecuted the case the way I think it should have been prosecuted, and I'm not even a lawyer, it would have been all about the fact that whatever, the victim had done or not done, bear spray, whatever, was not the case. That had nothing to do, it was not about that. If you want to, have Carmignani go through a trial for what you perceive he did, then you need to arrest him and investigate and put him on trial. This case was about a serial harasser, and they should have I had heard from, just as a journalist, multiple victims of Garrett Doty's who had been attacked and chased. I had been chased by his buddy Nate when I, was putting my car in my friend's garage on Magnolia. Just out of the blue, he came down the street with a stick and started screaming and chasing. I had to slam the garage door. These people were terrorizing Magnolia, the alleyway that was between my friend's place and Carmignani's. We actually she looks out at that alley. So it just made no sense to me that he lost that case. And this is who they're going to put on the Hanako Abe, Elizabeth Platt case. I'm shocked.
Exactly. And so the person that ended up arguing the case was ADA Sean Connolly, but wasn't as familiar with who Hanako is and, what's going on. So, but from a legal perspective, it was still effective. And even before...
I thought actually it wasn't Sean Connolly, it was Edward Mario.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
okay.
Edward Mario.
Okay, my apologies then. We might have gotten mixed up on there.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at my article, and it was, his name is Edward Mario, standing in for Courtney Bell.
Got it. Okay, so we'll correct that in the update. And also, in the case prior to McAllister, the public defender asked also for diversion, and Baker said no, and she basically said, but you just allowed us to do that for a similar case. So clearly he was doing something unusual with all the media there.
Oh, wow. That's funny.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah. That's, that's the power of the media all around. I mean, from hearing from this person that quite, conceivably could, change the course of the way criminal cases are handled from Sacramento on down to, having a judge be intimidated by the large swath of people that showed up because of the media surrounding the case. And I would like to point out, by the way, that only The Voice has really kept up on this case. It's a huge case, obviously, but, the Chronicle, the Standard, I don't even think has mentioned it. Examiner, the other publications, they only really got involved in this last leg of the case because of the publicity that we brought to the case as it came closer to this diversion hearing. It very conceivably could have been like the many diversion hearings that I go to, where there's no one in the room except me who's covering one of the cases, and they just divert one after the other. So it can't be said enough how important, not just the public's involvement, but the media's involvement is. Because again, when I went to cover the case of our editor's husband who had been bashed over the head by a serial felon named Xavier Blue Wright, I mean, they were zipping through. There was 25 cases on the docket at 9:00 in the morning. I got there by 12:30. They were done, and the majority of them were let out on diversion. And there was one other person in the courtroom who was a victim, and she was absolutely so upset. And I heard the public defender say to her, they're going to put him in like a halfway house. And she's like, where? In the city? And he goes, it's in the city, but I'm not really sure where or what it's called. Right. And she just burst into tears and ran out of the courtroom. And he just went back and sat down and said, okay, next case. I mean, that's how it is. I describe it in my article about Xavier Blue Wright. It's just that they get mixed up. The ADA was on Zoom. The public defender was in person. They had one private attorney who got up and did a grandiose, my client, and then the rest were just, only one was there because he happened to have just been arrested fairly recently and he was still in jail. The rest were all in, being held in mental hospitals, like where Xavier was being held at Napa. And then they just, set up, most of them get continued, as his did. But then at the second one or the third one, they said, yeah, okay, let's put him in the, and so I, again, I said, where is he going? And I wrote to them and they said, Baker houses. Well, a week later, a resident of the marina takes a picture and sends it to me and says, Xavier Blue Wright is right by where he attacked your editor's husband.
Oh my God.
He's standing on the corner screaming and yelling. And so I contacted the ADA and I said, isn't this violating his, terms? I know the police were out there because, for 30 days, they're supposed to stay inside of whatever halfway house they're released to. And this was within a week. He was wandering around the marina again. So this is a huge, huge problem. The diversion is a huge problem.
Did you say that Baker Places was running the facility where he was?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, and I all you need to do is sort of Google Baker Places, and you will see.
Oh yeah.
That they've gone through some rather huge hiccups with the way they run their places. They tried to merge with another nonprofit, and then they got into a scandal because they had run out of money because they were paying too much for parties, and so they went back and tried to demand more from the city because they had also been contracted to do another facility, and they also apparently, at least in the case of Baker Places, this was the nonprofit that actually contracted with an employee at DPH to be a sort of overnight administrator to make administrative decisions on something that would happen overnight. So she was double dipping health department and Baker Place's salary, essentially for like sleeping.
Yep.
And that's
right.
That's a completely outrageous situation.
Perfect.
And this it speaks to what the resources dealing with associated with diversion programs are made for, what they're equipped for. They're not equipped to handle people who commit multiple violent crimes, who kill or maim. People who kill or maim should not be going through diversion anyway.
No.
Because, there's going to be a demand. I think one of the problems, and I think Erica will remember her attempting to ask the question of the public defender in one of the cases, or actually I think it was in the McAllister case, about the whole nature of punishment and retribution. Well, guess what? Punishment has been a customary part of the justice system, and particularly in situations where people are maimed or killed, there's an expectation of public retribution or punishment, as well as, attempting to try and reform the accused. And,
well, in the case of Xavier Blue Wright, if you look at his record, his arrest record is long. He doesn't have charges because each one of them he was released to, mental health diversion or drug diversion. But he has kidnapping. He held 2 schoolgirls against their will in a doorway of a store in the marina. He has breaking and entering. He has hot prowl. He wandered into somebody's house or broke into somebody's house and then was wandering around in it. And they came downstairs and he was in their house. He has, burglary, drug possession. I mean, I highlight his long and illustrious career in the story, but the bottom line is that this guy has, there needs to be a separation, as I say in part 2, where I interviewed Raphael Mandelman. There needs to be a separation between being mentally ill and being violent, because as I'm working on an update on this topic of diversion, and Liz will be working on a piece about juvenile crime, and we're gonna basically have a 1-2 punch of what really is going on in the system, because those are 2 huge areas that are being ignored by officials, and Daniel Lurie crows that, crime is down 30%. And people say, that's because you're not seeing all the people that are diverted instead of put it, on trial. And you're also not seeing the juvenile crime, which isn't counted in the adult statistics that we have. Mm. But a huge reason is that, the main reason that you're seeing, although I have a public records request out to the mayor's office, and they have not bothered to respond to me yet, which tells me they're probably caucusing with Max Zabo and how to get around it. But basically, this 30% crime rate that he keeps touting. I want to see the data for that. Where's the data? Because for one thing, it's not it's sort of like the tree fell in the forest. If a tree falls in the forest, no one's there, right? If a guy commits a crime and he isn't arrested, or it's not reported, like that horrific video that JJ had of the guy being kicked and beaten and robbed, that he never called that in. They threatened him right there on the video. So how you and if someone is like Xavier Blue Wright never went to trial after knocking out an elder 73-year-old man who now has plates in his head and will never be the same, but he never went to trial for it, then I guess crime is down. But really, people need to wake up, because it is much scarier out there than you think it is.
Yeah,
exactly. Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Okay, yeah. Let me one minor thing. I will read Nextdoor, and I will read the Reddit R San Francisco, and it seems like on the Reddit R San Francisco, it seems like once a week or once every couple of weeks, somebody tells a story of being randomly attacked because they made this mistake of walking through the Tenderloin. And in Nextdoor, of course, you hear about much more, right? Because everyone is sort of really focused on the porch pirates and the disorderly conduct and the other behaviors, and they immediately go on Nextdoor. But when I did that editorial back last year about the perception of crime and the fact that, well, if you aren't doing anything about the minor crimes and the unreported crimes, and again, what I like to call the nexus of homelessness, drug abuse, and petty crime, people are still going to have that perception of petty crime, of an unsafe environment. And one of the things that Jim Dudley and I talked about is a lot of the stuff gets unreported, whether it be someone breaking into a car, or a guy randomly spits on you crazy, or a fight, or you just get randomly attacked by some person who is off their rocker or something on that order. These things don't get reported because they figure, what am I going to do? I don't want to wait around to go through the process to see this guy get diverted or probation, or maybe have to or end up serving time served in jail. And also, there's also a cultural aspect to it, especially on Reddit. There'll be at least one or two people that reply to the story saying, "Well, you want consequences for this person. Isn't that unfair?"
No, because they're poor and yeah.
Well,
they think that until they get
it's not
killed.
It's not even an equity issue. It's just people who are against consequences. It's bizarre.
Yeah, until they get attacked, and then they change their tune. I mean,
right.
But Liz, when you were watching the Hanako Elizabeth Platt, did you get the feeling that the public defender in that case was a little bit surprised that he couldn't jerry rig and gerrymander his way into diversion?
Exactly. Basically he was asking the judge to break the law. And Judge Begert pretending to act surprised because had we not brought it to light, I think it would have been granted, the diversion would have been granted. And this has been happening before somehow. And I think the deputy public defender definitely seemed shocked that he didn't get the request that he was hoping for. And with regards to, as you said, a lot of unreported crime and youth crime, that brings me to the Keontae Gaffron's case.
Yeah, that's an incredible case.
Yeah, so he
was so much darker than I thought, by the way.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I just was going to say the Keontae case, you'll explain, but it was so much darker than I knew.
Yes, and when he was charged at that time, he was 18 years old. So he was representing himself in court. There was 12 jurors. I think about 5 or 6 were women. And he was basically cross-examining SFPD officer about the toxicology report and sort of the scene that kind of indicated there might be some assault, sexual assault, but that wasn't one of the charges that he was guilty on. He was found guilty by jury for first-degree murder and a bunch of other charges, including burglary, first-degree. And the prosecutor was very effective. I think he was Nathan Quigley.
Yes.
And he asked for aggravated factors, which means that you have a long history of increasingly more violent crimes, especially during his youth record, which isn't so easily publicly available. But he pushed for those, which means that it could have been presented again to the jury and it would have made the sentencing much harsher. And Gathron said that he would waive his right to have that evidence looked by a jury again and have it decided by the judge instead. But Quigley, the ADA definitely pushed for those. So that means the sentencing can be much, much harsher because he did show a very long history of escalating violent crime throughout his youth.
Well, and the sexual assault is what I was talking about when I said that took a much darker turn than I had known from what the papers originally presented when they first, wrote about this case, that her top was up, her pants were pulled down, and that the DNA matched this guy, Gathron.
Yeah, the officer did mention that they submitted DNA, and he was just kind of implying that they didn't know what happened, obviously, but they're trying to find DNA evidence, and they found some, and it matched. And because he had a long history, they were able to match it to the database, and it was, with a DNA match, it was very conclusive. But there was a serious struggle, as you know, and the evidence of, boot prints and stuff on her face and blunt trauma on her head. And so it was very violent. And so they didn't really know what to make of it. But there wasn't enough evidence for them to charge with the sexual assault. And so they don't know if that was an attempt but from the SFPD, he said, well, we submitted what we could find. That was it.
It's just horrific.
Yeah.
Horrific. And by the way, this is the same situation with, again, before Boudin released Troy McAllister in 2015, his last arrest was for a burglary. And in that case, George Gascon, then DA, not known as Mr. Moderate, argued that same thing, that through his 30-year career, going all the way back into his juvenile record, Troy McAllister had a escalating violent factor in his crimes that should mean not only was he a third striker, yes, Gascon said that, but he should face 35 years to life in prison. So in my opinion, if Courtney Bell is the guy on this case and he can't win this case, that's a big problem for Brooke Jenkins.
Yeah, I think that's pretty clear.
So I'm just saying, if I were Brooke Jenkins, I'd be thinking maybe Nancy Tung or somebody a little bit more high profile with a long, I don't know. I just can't imagine why they would put a subpar ADA on this case. And the fact he couldn't win the case with Garrett Doty is troubling to me, because there were, many occasions in the courtroom where the public defender, pulled a Jeff Adachi, like Jeff Adachi was all for immigrants unless he had a witness in a domestic violence case against an illegal immigrant who also was an illegal immigrant, and then he'd threaten them with their status. That's kind of the Jeff Adachi school of defense. And I think this is a classic case of, them using really questionable tactics to turn this all around and introduce, evidence that should never have been in the case about, say Carmen Yanni possibly bear spraying. If he did, okay, terrible, but arrest him and put him on trial. That's not the place to do it. So I'm concerned that this is the guy who's going to be trying Troy McAllister.
Yeah, I think everybody should be. Although, yeah, if you get it, you're going to need to get in a competent, high-profile veteran prosecutor to do this case.
Yeah, I just don't get it. I just don't get why Brooke Jenkins is not. I mean, she can't be involved in it clearly because of the, ethics violation that she has on that case for obtaining his record. But it seems, Nancy Tung, I'm just saying, she's got clean hands on this. It just seems to me like you go with your best, and I don't get why this case is being tried by this ADA who has a, kind of a sketchy, I don't know. I watched some of the Garrett Doty trial, and I was floored by the missed opportunities that he had to bring up the fact that the guy that was on trial was not the victim in this particular case. Like, take that into another courtroom. It just so much stuff got by this guy, and I'm very concerned as someone who's followed the Hanako Abe case and has stayed in constant contact with Hiroko Abe, her Hanako's mother. I'm shocked actually that the first appearance he made from Zoom, the second appearance he wasn't even there. Very concerning.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, somebody like Sean Connolly was mentioned earlier, and I was questioning that because he had been with the DA's office a long time, ran for judge, he had also worked for some other local governments, and I think had his own firm for a while. But I see now he is back with the DA's office, so he's another person who could work on that case. He's got lots of experience and knows what's up. At least whenever I've talked to him, that's what I've heard. That's what I've gathered. So Forrest, what is your take on the state of these current cases and how the community is reacting to them?
I think that in the case of Grandma Huang, I mean, hearing those details come out about her case was just like horrific. Like you guys said, like I did not realize the extent of this individual's depravity. I think people are very happy that case returned a guilty verdict. There's like a feeling of relief because there's been so much like just really wonky stuff going on in the courtrooms.
Yeah.
Where like it's like almost like an alternate reality where like something so like flagrant like that could somehow still return but like there could still all sorts of verdicts could come back, right? I mean, I think that there's something like going on in the court system where it's either like activist judges or like it's just so hard to get information out of there, and it's so hard to even like show up day after day like Liz and others here did to know what's going on. And so I think there's a big like sense of relief. I think a number of people are going to show up for sentencing on the 25th, and that like number of people will kind of show you really how much interest there is on this case. And I think also the implication is that potentially we are turning a corner, right? Because you have several more cases that are in the pipeline, right? Like Grandpa Beecha is, literally a murder that happened a month later. They're starting their trial. And there are other cases. I'm actually not 100% sure what other cases there are. But it's just like, okay, we're finally like correcting wrongs that were done 5 years ago. So I think that's how the community feels. But I would love to, I don't know, like Liz, I would love to know like what was your impression of like what was happening in the courtroom, right? Because like this guy was defending himself, right?
Yes, it was a circus. The judge Fleming, he was very stern. You could tell he was no nonsense. And the judge did not recommend for him to defend himself, but he insisted. But they gave him what they call an assistant public defender anyways to sit next to him and give him advice to make sure that the court proceedings continue, right? So the jury, you can tell from their faces, they're completely exhausted because again and again, they're cross-examining an SFPD officer, and he says, I don't understand your question. I don't understand your question. And the judge says, ask the question. What is the question? Be direct. It's too vague. There's all these criminal procedures that apparently Gathron spent some time in jail reading through some law books and decided that he was going to represent himself. So that the hubris there is just astounding.
Yeah, wow.
I think I want to also address something that is said a lot, unfortunately, by the city's far left establishment, progressive, if you can even use that word, Democrats, where this guy clearly was severely mentally ill, right? Was that obvious, Liz?
You mean Gathron?
Yeah, the guy defending himself.
No, I think that he presented himself quite well looking in his suit. And you could tell, the extent of his crimes show you that he had no moral, compass or any guilt for the types of details in the crime. But I don't know. He seemed competent. I guess the judge decided that he could be competent enough to actually represent himself. So gotcha. I think, yeah. So it does stick in that sense where, he's competent to ask questions, and a couple of times even, pretty much yelled at the judge and the court saying, basically, are you a referee or a player? I'm getting triple teamed here.
Sorry.
Oh, God. Well,
the jury's faces.
The way I saw your recount of his remarks and some of the coverage in the other papers, the impression that I got was that he had a severe lack of insight. Of course, that's probably a conclusion I came to when he asked to represent himself in a case like this.
Right. I think,
go ahead.
The point I was trying to make is that, I think the biggest point that is being conveyed by this verdict and this trial, and the biggest correction that's being made to the status quo or the system, is this argument that, this guy has mental health issues, he's a little bit he has some mental health issues, he could use some treatment, stuff like that. They're saying that about Troy McAllister as well. But sure, I'm sure this guy wasn't altogether right. I'm sure him and other people suffer from mental health issues. Tons of people have mental health issues. But if you go through the trial, the things that guy did, the things that he did to Grandma Huang, the things that he's done in the past, his thinking in which he, committed these crimes, it's just something that we cannot accept as a society, right? And I think that really that verdict, was this turning point in this moment where before this verdict, any public defender could be oh, my client has mental health issues, and that's why he did something horrific, right? And we need to look at this from a different perspective. And it's well, there is no perspective that exists for someone who would be willing to sexually assault and beat an Asian grandma to death, other than there needs to be a serious consequence to anyone who is like that, and that individual needs to be taken off the streets immediately. And so I think that everyone feels relief. Everyone is, excited for the next cases, excited for this new chapter in our city. But now we can firmly say you can be whoever you want, but you can't do stuff like that and get away with it.
It's interesting in the Grandma Huang case because the public defender did reach out to me, and I did actually revise part of an article I written early on to reflect some of their concerns. Because the verdict had already been read and, or it was about to be. No, he'd been found guilty. But one of the things they kept stressing to me was that they did not seek diversion in his case. And I think that's because of this potential sexual assault. I just think it was a very hard sell, and they knew it. Had that not been the case, if there hadn't been the shirt up and the pants down and the DNA evidence, and the fact that he clearly watched her, because after he beat her and left her behind a garbage can, he went across the street and burglarized her house, which is how he was identified, because the neighbor saw him in her going in her house, and that's how he was identified and caught down the street later. But then he went on a crime spree after that. So I think that made it very hard for the district attorney, for the public defender to seek diversion of any kind for this guy. And because the victims were all Asian, there was that element that they know there are people out there, advocates like Forrest and Liz, and people that are in the community that would have absolutely made something out of the fact that they were going to try to get diversion for a guy who was clearly attacking people based on race, as far as the evidence goes. I found it very interesting that they never reached out to me about Troy McAllister, but they did reach out to me about Gathrone and wanted me to know they did not ever seek diversion in his case.
And that really highlights really how how I don't even know how to put this in words, this fantasy universe that we were living in during COVID in this city, right? I have no problem with a public defender's default to getting diversion, right? That's probably their job. But the fact that Susan is implying that if he hadn't raped the grandma, but he had just beaten her to death, maybe there would have been an avenue to get diversion, right?
I believe that, yeah.
It's insane, right? It's just Troy McAllister, the public defender was goading a sitting judge to basically break the law when this guy, he took a gun out during his date, robbed this lady, and then subsequently used her car to kill 2 people. Oh, well,
yep.
We have to maybe give it a shot, right? It's that. I mean, that's just I'm hoping that this verdict is the turning point for us leaving the Looney Tune world we were living in before.
One can hope. I think that the way these cases go will be, especially the Troy McAllister and Grandpa Visha. I think, it's going to be an interesting time, but I do believe that the Asian hate component to Gathrone's, it was, the fact that he attacked or, stole phones and burglarized, robbed, whatever, 7 or 8 people in the 2 weeks after that were all Asian. I think that was a problem for the public defender for sure, because they know that there is, the Asian American community would have come out in as they do always, but, it definitely had that element of a hate crime, even though it wasn't prosecuted as such. And I do think that the DNA and the possible sexual assault was a big problem for them, despite the fact, of course, that, Troy McAllister has well over 100 felonies to his name over 30 years in various counties, 93 of those being in San Francisco. He had 73 prior to getting out when Boudin released him, and then he racked up another 20 over the short period that he was out before killing Hanako and Elizabeth.
And Susan, on that point, I would love to hear a little bit more from you. I mean, clearly this era of what is called restorative justice, what is called, diversion, or finding alternate punishments to crimes. It was abused. It was abused by the far left.
It was definitely abused.
And you have this great article where you go into the diversion thing really went out of control.
Oh yeah.
These beings are a great example of it, but do you have anything kind of more you want to say?
Well, we just did a 4-part series on diversion that is something that I had researched and worked on for when Boudin was in office. And we worked with data scientists. We worked with Carl Olson, who's a famous First Amendment attorney, because I was requesting over and over, as was Stop Crime SF, the diversion records that Boudin should have, because he was sending pretty much everybody to diversion. And keep in mind that diversion was never meant for violent criminals or repeat felons or anybody with that kind of a record. So the fact that Boudin was using diversion for people who had committed attempted murder, were in gangs, drug dealers, sometimes in drug court, for example, the drug user and the drug dealer would be sitting right next to each other. That's not what diversion was for. So it came as no surprise when we had to get Carl Olson involved and threaten a lawsuit to get this information, that Boudin, the reason why Boudin wasn't handing them over was because he didn't have any of the records. He had literally not tracked a single diversion case in the entire time he'd been sending people to diversion. So when he was recalled, we were still waiting for those records. We still don't have them. So I recently submitted a public records request to Brooke Jenkins to ask for all of the diversion records that Boudin should have collected in between when we requested them, when the lawyer got involved, and when he was recalled. But I also asked for all of the diversion records up until the very current date. So I'm waiting for those. I know for a fact that diversion is still being used by both the prosecutors and the defense attorneys. It's still being used. I want to see who's being diverted. We know the mentally ill are being diverted on a pretty high level of cases still. And again, only 3% of mentally ill patients or people who are considered mentally ill have committed violent crimes when you look at the statistics. So how is it that 99% of the people in San Francisco qualify for mental health diversion? I mean, just the statistics don't line up.
I think the person who was a mentally ill criminal here was Chase Boudin.
Well, that too.
Honestly, how can you look at all these cases and be like, oh, well, we'll just divert it, right? We'll just, we'll see what happens, I mean, seriously, he's the one calling the kettle black here, right? I don't know. He just
he's all about, ideology and without a doubt, that's what happened. But he got caught with his, records down because he basically had no records of anyone he ever diverted. But in that 4-part series, I talk about a study that was done in 2020, which was done by a think tank, by the way, of very pro-diversion people. One of Arnold Ventures, who's a former Enron executive turned public, menace, who is all about, he's all about Boudin's style of public defender. And he is the one who created the software that basically lets them kind of scale a criminal on a scale of, dangerous to not dangerous. And that software is the reason why Ed French's killer was released. It was quote, a mistake with the software that released him. So, 2 weeks later, Ed French was dead. So this guy, Arnold Ventures, put together this study on diversion. Well, the information came back so bad for them that they couldn't spin it. It's bad. And it's very detailed, and I have charts and graphs that I worked with a data scientist to create. But if you go and you look at those statistics and just read what those statistics say, even they couldn't spin it. And I remember the Chronicle did a story on Boudin's diversion, and they cherry-picked a couple of things out of the study, but they were the one or two things out of dozens and dozens and dozens of pages of things that screamed diversion doesn't work. And I think the most surprising thing that came out of it was that people who went through diversion, both low-level and high-level crime, were more likely to reoffend than people who never went through diversion. So that tells you that going to jail or spending time in jail or even going to prison is more effective than diversion.
So, Susan, I think it's important that a lot of people don't understand what diversion is. We say the word, you've said the word many times. I understand what it is, but can you describe what actually diversion is?
Yes.
Because I think a lot of people may think it's diversion into a specific program where they're going to be isolated for a while, getting treatment, etc. So, yes, if you could mention more about that.
That's a good point, Erica. Yeah, I'm so used to this stuff. But the diversion can be many things. In San Francisco, other places have it. We saw that happen in the case in North Carolina where that guy had gone through diversion and killed, the Ukrainian immigrant on the train. Diversion is in San Francisco, we have alternative court. So we have drug court and we have mental health court. And if the judge decides in those cases, and by the way, Bayard is the creator of these courts, if the judge in these cases decides that this person has mental problems or had a drug problem when he committed the crimes, rather than sending him through a trial or sending him into the justice system, they divert him into one of many programs. I mean, it's hard to say exactly what they are because, again, Chesapeake never tracked any of them. And diversion had always been used, even under Gascon, but never to the level. I mean, I have the numbers in the article, but it went up over, I think it was 350%. It went up under Boudin of the use of it. So the facts of the matter are that he never tracked them, so we don't really know where they went, but they can go anywhere from Baker Place to, which is supposedly where, this guy's avian blue right went. But they still have by the way, and many of these places are like halfway houses, so they can come and go. Only the first 30 days they're supposed to stay, for observation, but it never works out that way. Most of them just walk away and never come back. That's what ends up happening in most of these cases.
I think that's really important to establish so that people understand that is what it is. It typically is. There's no four walls. There's no guaranteed treatment. There's no isolation. They go back into the community. Diversion is diversion from a punitive approach to basically nothing, a whole lot of nothing. And that is why I think there's a huge disconnect between what people think it is versus what it actually is.
So Troy McAllister is a great example. So if you look through, and I have all of the transcripts from all of his cases going back 30 years. If you look at his most recent case in 2015, they talk about how he went through the Salvation Army, or they wanted him to go to the Salvation Army, and Gascon fought against that. But he in the past had gone through Goodwill. He had very briefly worked with the Goodwill. So, he had done a little bit of work, sorting clothes for Goodwill, and then he just disappeared. They just wander off, and then you hear about them next when they're arrested. But in Troy's case, had he not killed somebody, and made such a huge splash with that, if I hadn't have written the story about how he went on to commit all these other crimes, I don't think that this case, would have gone on to get the attention that it did. I mean, the fact that he had 73 felonies when he was arrested, that's kind of a huge deal. But there are a whole lot of Troys out there that have multiple other felony charges that just fade into the woodwork, and you never hear from them again because they don't kill people. That's, I think, what is going to come out of this story I'm working on, this investigative report that I'm working on now, is how many Troy McAllisters there are out there that don't get arrested. Again.
And in 2022, the governor signed the Justice Data Accountability and Transparency Act. It's AB 2418. And it was basically mandating that there would be standardized data reporting from prosecutors to the California Department of Justice and also to the public. And what happens is it's been being implemented kind of differently across counties, but Yolo County is like the model for transparent data. And that includes like charges, enhancements, bail decisions, plea bargains, diversion, dispositions, and post-conviction proceedings, right? And so they make this data completely publicly available in real time to the media or whoever wants it. And they also supply that information to the Department of Justice. And that's the model that we should be following. And I know that now Mayor Lurie is looking through the charter. This is a great opportunity for all of that information to be much more streamlined. And so you could be transparent about it, and you can actually look for things too, because it's going to be cut by different demographics. So you can actually look for true racial bias if there was anything, right? Because that's how they make it so public that you can actually, it's not just, hearsay or anecdotal data. Is that really true? Or, is it something else? So that's the kind of stuff that Yolo County is doing very well. When I spoke to the California DA Association, that we should be following.
Ooh.
Yeah, there has to be, transparency. There has to be transparency with diversion, because there is a reason why these guys, when Mayor Lurie says, "Oh, crime is down 30%," and then someone sees, someone get knocked in the head, there's a reason why that's happening, and it's because many of these people either were never arrested, or when they were arrested, they were sent through diversion, like, oh, he uses drugs, so we'll divert him into a drug program. Well, a huge percentage, if you look at the evidence from that study, a huge percentage of those people never finish. A huge number, well over 80%, never finish whatever program they're sent to. And the ones who do, it doesn't stick. They're often arrested again. So I think that diversion is something that, in my opinion, needs to be ended. I just don't think there's any reason to have diversion. I think even for low-level defenders, this study, which, again, was done by Arnold Ventures, who really wanted it to be positive, the low-level defenders have just as dismal of success rates. They end up reoffending. They end up their crimes end up becoming, from going from misdemeanors to felonies. The longer they're let go and the longer they're allowed to be out there using drugs, and the more their brains start to become mush, and the more they start to need money for more drugs. And that's where diversion just simply doesn't work, because, again, fentanyl changed the game. I think that's a fact that we can't ignore. And everybody seems to want to ignore the fact that fentanyl is not your grandma's heroin. And, people have pitched no hitters on heroin, but you can't do that on fentanyl. So I think that it's time for, diversion to completely end. The problem is that the truly mentally ill, there is nowhere to put them. That's what Raphael Mandelman said in my interview with him, that San Francisco has nowhere to put them. And there's a problem. When I interviewed Mayor Matt Mahan in San Jose, he told me that the problem is that there's city and there's county, and that the county deals with the mentally ill. So the beds and stuff are all county, but San Francisco doesn't have that, because San Francisco is a city and a county. So they need to start doing something about that, and be that, going to the Cow Palace and building a huge structure, in Daly City or wherever. It doesn't have, I don't care where it is. We certainly, it needs to happen somewhere. There has to be beds for people that can't, and they have to be locked.
Well, you can also go into agreements with other counties, by counties, to use or create joint facilities as well. But again, it all has to do with political will.
Yeah, you have to. People don't like to hear this, but there are people that just need to be locked up. Troy McAllister needs to serve life in prison. End of story. He still has zero. He says he wants to talk to Mrs. Abe, who, by the way, has no interest in that. And by the way, the reason people ask me why I don't talk about Elizabeth Platt, her family doesn't want Troy to go to prison. She was, by her family's own account, a Marxist who came to San Francisco because she thought it was a more Marxist place to be, and was homeless at the time, had her own issues, and the family doesn't want anything political to come of this case, which is, absurd in my opinion, but because they don't want their story to really be used in any way about this, then there's very little known about her or her, her situation. So, but Mrs. Abe is not interested in talking to Troy, and Troy was told to say that by the public defender. Troy has shown, in the last article I wrote, I had a little snippet of when he was released under Boudin and his conversation with Judge Georgie, and he shows zero gratefulness, zero remorse for anything he's done. All he keeps asking is, when is he going to get his ankle monitor off? Is he going to get credits for the extra time he spent in jail? Where is his time credits? And she basically says the same thing Begert says. Good luck, sir. That's That's what she says at the end, good luck, sir. And she says, oh, oh, yes, we're going to get your ankle monitor taken off today. Don't worry. Well, he had another ankle monitor on when he was caught at San Francisco State University by the police there. And then they asked him what was wrong with his leg, and he said he was shot a week before in a fight. So this is a guy that never should see the light of day. He is a very big threat to the public. Even his own family thinks he should be in prison.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. And again, that's also a perfect example of, the different attitudes that some aspects of the public have had to have adopted on situations like this. And I just find it mystifying, even when it happens to them, to keep to a stance like that. I just find it absolutely mystifying. Now, Forrest apparently got kicked off. Did a bunch of listeners also get kicked off?
Yes.
God.
Yeah.
I'm looking at.
This platform.
X. We have to find another platform. And also for those of you who want to listen to some of our past talks, we have archives up on YouTube as well. So just look for Voice of San Francisco YouTube and you'll find them. So let's see. I'm not seeing Forrest coming back on at all. So I guess he is gone, which is, he contributed a lot. So there you go. Jake Lake, if you haven't been kicked off, thank you for the kind words about our publication and our talks. And let's see if anybody wants to. I guess we could open it up to comments from other people if they'd like to. Maybe if they want to message us, if they want to say anything, or it's 12 o'clock, and we can also talk about what future coverage is going to happen. You've already talked a little bit more about future coverage.
I would love to introduce a way to kind of maybe launch some conversation. Something that I've been very much vexed with, and I have an op-ed coming out this week, is the polarization of San Francisco. And it does seem pretty obvious to me that the good is getting better and the bad is getting worse. And I'd love to hear from other people whether or not they believe that that's true. They've seen that. And maybe what their solutions to that is, because it's pretty disturbing to see this. I see this sort of the magnet effect, where it's, instead of everything closing in, it's increasing in its difference.
Interesting. Let's keep our eyes peeled, readers. Keep your eyes peeled for that editorial coming out in the next couple of days. And if you've got any insights on that, email Erica or email us, and let's talk more about it, because it sounds like it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah.
But what I see is very, okay, this is just a very short way to encapsulate it. But what I see is some tech bro that moved here 3 years ago, is 23, taking a picture off his deck in Dolores Park saying, look at the sunshine. It's just horrible here in San Francisco. And then I see a video like JJ's where a guy just gets his, butt handed to him just for trying to walk through the sidewalk and ask people to move. And they kick him and punch him and rob him. They take his Apple Watch. They take his wallet. They take his iPhone. They take one of his shoes. And then another guy basically holds him, which is, by the law, it's kidnapping. In the video, he holds him against his will, tells him to give him his other shoe. And the guy starts to basically cry. He's punch drunk. People said, oh, he seems inebriated. Well, he's punch drunk. They kicked him in the head. And he looked kind of like a tech guy. He's just walking home, maybe from a bar, who knows. But he just kept saying, I just want to go home. I just want to go home. And this happened at 6th and Market, of course. And the only reason he was let go is because JJ finally, trying to be objective and videotaping, he saw this was not going to go well. And he gave the guy holding him $10 and said, youngster, as JJ says, youngster. It's not worth it. Let him go. And then and then the guy, so he's, but they've got my stuff. And JJ just says, just get out of here. Go across the street. Just get out of here. And he finally convinces the guy to leave. So again, there's a great example of a guy who, he's not going to report this. All his stuff is missing, and these homeless guys and drug dealers, the drug users and drug dealers all together were kicking and beating him.
It was horrific.
And robbing him.
And he looked, I don't know, but he could have been on the spectrum from the way that he was kind of repeating some things and not really situationally aware of how much grave danger he was in, kind of walking through this den of addicts and dealers. I wonder if maybe he does, he maybe has some sort of,
well, he was punch
challenge.
Drunk. He was punch drunk. I mean, they if you watch the video, they kick him multiple times in the head. At one point, he's knocked out.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And at the end, JJ has to keep telling him to leave, but he's like, I want to leave. And it just kind of reminded me of, some kids that I've used to work with where, they're kind of repeating the same thing, but they're not really sure how to act on it. So I don't know if he's probably in that case not going to be able. Someone should file a police report on his behalf, and I did reach out to JJ to see if he could do that.
Oh wow, okay. I agree with you. Again, when people say, "Well, I don't file police reports," and I'm guilty of this. A couple months ago, 3 months ago, my car was broken into broad daylight in Japantown, and I didn't bother. I just got the window fixed. But you do need to file reports because that's how you find out whether crime is down. Because unless the reports are filed, then there's, it's the tree in the forest. So, yes, if you see someone getting beat up, call the police, when you feel safe to do so. When you see somebody being robbed, call the police. When you see someone doing drugs in public, don't just call 911, don't just do 311. Call the police. And that's what they do in every other city. I just don't know how in the world I can stress this any further. Everyone needs to come down to the Silicon Valley or go to Marin or go to Napa or wherever, anywhere, and see the difference of how people are treated. You are not allowed to do drugs in public. You are not allowed to sell drugs in public, period. And until that becomes a crime in San Francisco, crime is never really going to be down.
Exactly. And for the Prop 36 implementation, if your third drug use offense, after 2 convictions, that would be a felony now. So we can't implement it if we're not reporting the crime. And we're not reporting the crime because traditionally it was a misdemeanor. So no one was reporting it because nothing would get done.
And that's a problem that we have with the Prop, there's a lot of problems with Prop 36, starting with Gavin being unwilling to fund it. And, and Cal Matters just did an article, which Mike can post in the comments that, talks about the fact that it's, very uneven, the implementation. And, San Jose is number one. They've done the best job with at least getting over, I think, 300 cases. But San Francisco only had 1, and they were last. And, of course, the DA's office was mad at me for doing that article and pointing that out. But it's a fact. It's a fact.
Yes, and your priors from other counties count, too. So even though Boudin wasn't necessarily, filing these charges, what you did in other counties should matter if we didn't have a washout of 5 years prior, which is being set kind of arbitrarily right now.
Well, it's not arbitrary because we actually had a response from Brooke Jenkins that we ran in The Voice, and I've been trying to find it, Mike, and for some reason I can't find it. But there is a response from her to my article that we just ran in full. And in that article, the DA says flat out that they made the decision to only go back 5 years because they, quote, didn't want to be punishing people for stuff they did 10 or 15 years ago. And so that is 100% on the DA. And I know people out there who think Brooke Jenkins is much better than Boudin. I do as well. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely think she's a humongous improvement over Boudin. I mean, frankly, my 12-year-old rescued Staffordshire Bull Terrier who's deaf, Marcy, would be a better DA than Boudin. But, I truly do believe that that she's leaps and bounds ahead and better than Boudin. However, you can't just let her off the hook for stuff either, because there has to be a level. That's why the media is called the fourth estate. Like, we have to be able to hold people accountable for stuff. And in my opinion, only going back 5 years on someone's criminal record, that goes into Boudin territory, which of course he didn't put anyone in jail. So that's why, a big part of why San Francisco has only filed one Prop 36 case.
Yes, and you're absolutely right. It's not arbitrary in that sense. And across other counties, they don't set any limit, so that it's a case by case, right? So that they can determine, is this applicable or not?
Right.
So like San Diego has filed tons of cases, San Jose, and they're just not putting these arbitrary limits, putting a washout limit, which allows them to seek priors in other counties, in other states, which would be applicable for San Francisco, since Boudin didn't have too many convictions for drug use offenses.
Right. And so a great case in that would be Garrett Doty, right? So let's just say he was one of the people that came across, he wouldn't have any priors in the last 5 years because he was, found not guilty in that case of beating that guy up. And then prior to that, Boudin had released him over and over and over again. But if you were to go back 10 years, he has a domestic violence arrest in his home state of Kentucky, where he tried to choke his girlfriend to death. So that would pop up if you went back 10 years.
Yes, and also because most of the drug addicts in our streets, as law enforcement has said, is not from San Francisco.
Correct.
They're mostly tourists. That's why it's even more important that they look into the prior records longer and from other places. So it's a lot more applicable, even though Boudin didn't have these convictions, that people were not from here.
That's right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I just wanted to put out a word to listeners out there, just in case, because I think, first off, I went ahead and posted a link to the Cal Matters article under our Voice of San Francisco site, under our account on X. So if you want to go over there and take a look at that article, that I just posted that there. But also, I think the session that we're on for Spaces is not that stable, or was not that stable, because I'd been noticing weird things ever since it started, like a bunch of other people besides us being given speaker permissions. Those people are, of course, nice people, and they haven't been here.
But they didn't want to speak. They actually said in the comments, "I don't need to speak."
Yeah, exactly. So,
and we lost Forrest. He got bumped off, and then several people that I know were listening. I all of a sudden they went poop. They disappeared.
Yeah, so
we're having a problem.
Yeah, so I don't know if we should stay on too much longer. Although Robert O'Reilly has asked us what we thought of Mayor Lurie's newest social posts talking about intensifying operations to shut down drug activity.
Sorry.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, I say again, all I can say is, and again, this is another thing I get a lot of flack for. It's like, oh, you're so mean to Mayor Lurie. It's not my job to be his friend, right? I mean, it's ironic because as soon as London Breed wasn't mayor anymore, she blocked me. And I'm sure Mayor Lurie would love to block me too, but that's my job, and I'm calling him on BS. I'm sorry. He talks and talks, but he has to do. And I read twice this morning, people said they saw him get out of a black Escalade and walk to the corner and ask a person to stop dealing drugs. Well, I have some weird issues with that. One is that he drives in a Rivian, and I know what the black Escalades are from when I covered Chesa Boudin. The black Escalades are outfitted big time with security stuff, and that's where, when you're going to take out a security detail that you really need security, you'd go out in the black Escalade. So people are saying, but he drives a Rivian. Well, that's true, but the city has, you can find them. There's an entire lot of them of those black Escalades, where they use them for high security stuff. And so it seems planned to me that he went out in the Escalade. It also is bizarre that a security detail would let a sitting mayor walk up to a drug dealer and say, please don't deal drugs here, because anyone like JJ who covers these guys, or Tom Wolfe who dealt with them, Stanley Roberts who's covered much of this over the years with us and on video, will tell you, I mean, when Stanley goes out to cover this stuff, he had to bring $1,000 a day security detail when we did that 4-part series, Gotham by the Bay, about the Tenderloin. He had $1,000 security detail that he took with him and he was threatened twice while he was out there. So, I mean, honest truth is, I find it very strange that twice in one day, after he's taken a lot of flack, after that video from JJ surfaced, that he was seen by people twice jumping out of an Escalade and going and telling drug dealers to take their business elsewhere. There's something very fishy and very weird about that. Of course, again, just knowing what the Escalades are normally used for. Escalade, by the way, was used in the case with Chesa Boudin when he had his investigators go dump David Sachs' trash and try to find some dirt on him. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And there was a whole big thing about, that where David Sachs was asking me, should I get more security? And I said, yeah, you might want to, they're used for much bigger operations than just driving the mayor around town. So that he does in his Escalade. So that's why this whole thing seems planned to me. Just knowing the use of the if you I can tell you off the air where you can go take pictures of it, because they're just like lined up, and the city has them, and he could have been using them for stuff in the past, but this is the first I've heard of him being in the Escalades.
And to jump in here on the same subject, I don't think any of this really matters. What matters is, are we going to be seeing? No, not are we going to be seeing. Have we seen a difference, a positive difference in the affected areas or not? The answer is no, we haven't.
Well, Robert points out that there have been some actual busts.
Pardon me?
Robert points out that there have been some actual busts lately, including one particularly notorious female drug dealer was finally snapped up by DEA.
I don't think anybody could dispute that that's not positive. That is great. But what we're not seeing is a difference in the community. We're not seeing a thinning of the crowds. We're not. That is simply not happening. So really? I love the fact that we are making some progress regarding arrests, hopefully prosecutions and jail time for all of that, because it's really important. But what's most clear at this stage is that there is zero difference in the community. And that's a fact.
Let me go ahead. This is a point that I belabor, and that is that before it's gotten this big, I would dare say that even many of us were guilty of the same thing, of ignoring. If it's over the hill, we ignore it.
Mm-hmm.
That's been the whole thing. And then unfortunately, that's compounded by this culture that is held by many people here that says, not only is the tree not falling if you're not in the forest, we shouldn't care what's going on in the forest. We shouldn't.
Doesn't affect me.
It doesn't affect you, and that goes to the point not only of the drug dealing use, but also other aspects of violent crime like gang warfare.
Yep.
I've had former sworn officers tell me, you can walk down the street on Third. You can walk down Third and Oakdale, and you might feel a little nervous if there's gang activity going on there. But if you don't look like them, you aren't dressed like them, they're not going to go after you.
And that's might get hit in the crossfire, though.
Exactly. Kids, families get caught in crossfire. Handgun bullets. Okay. So the effective range of a handgun is maybe 50 meters. The bullet can still penetrate cover and kill for at least 300 meters. If somebody fires something off.
And of course, you're not going to be down there, though. That's the whole point I think the police are also making. You're not going to be down there. I actually worked in Hunters Point in, I think I was in my mid-20s or something, and I had a temp job at a place called the Effie Marie Bakery, which is down in the Hunters Point. They made the famous rum cakes for Macy's. And I, remember my first day driving to work at 6 a.m. and going down 3rd Street and seeing, a couple of guys just standing out in front of a liquor store, which was open, by the way. And one of them just had a gun in his hand. And I was, what? They specifically told me not to go out to lunch. I was dressed up. They told me not to do that. When I got, the little, I'm a tough city girl now in me and decided to go out and go to lunch myself, I, found a Kentucky Fried Chicken. I walked through the parking lot and don't even want to tell you what the guys were saying about my round behind and things like that. And I was like, okay, this is weird. And then when I went in, they had bulletproof glass where you put your money in, they turned it around and right. So those are the things that unless you're in Hunters Point, you're never going to come in contact with.
Yeah, I know. But the people who live there, they have to face the music
every day.
The mothers who still take the grandmothers who still take their kids to church on Sunday, and their sons and daughters have long left the city either because they got priced out or and they live in the East Bay now because they're priced out. Those people have to face the music when they visit the Bayview. The immigrant people from Asia from Southeast Asia and other places who settle in the Tenderloin,
Yep.
they open up their banh mi shops. They have to put up with what goes on down there. They have to face the music.
Stanley's mother, Stanley's mother-in-law still lives in the Bayview. His wife was born and raised there. And, she tells all those stories. And till this day, when they take her to church, they go get her and take her to church because they don't want her to go by herself. And those are the things people who don't live in those neighborhoods will never know.
And on one level, this is a problem that we've always had. And the problem now is that during COVID, we had this situation where people were more outspoken about it because of two things. First off, it got bigger and people could see it. You could drive down Market Street and you couldn't ignore it when you're driving down Market Street. The second, and the next thing that happened was demographic changes in District 6. People became outraged when they saw this stuff that people had originally been used to, and you had new people that saw it that had never seen anything like this before. And I part of that insight that I have, maybe it's my own bias, maybe I'm completely wrong, but when every day job that I've had in San Francisco has been in the Civic Center area around City Hall. That's in over 30 years. And that area is just, it was at best, you'll look around the corner and you'll see destructive activity.
Yeah.
And nowadays you don't have to look around the corner. You can just walk by the corner. And during the height of COVID, it was in the streets everywhere. And apparently based on what JJ recorded so recently, this is the stuff that's happening, especially late, after dark. It's coming out of the woodwork completely.
Well, just a few weeks ago, I walked through the Tenderloin, and it was terrible. It was around City Hall, actually looked pretty good, and I was with someone else. But I walked, around City Hall. They had a lot of sheriffs posted there, and there were people in the dog park. There were children playing on the play structures. As soon as you got to Willow, the notorious Willow Street, and then beyond that, it was horrific. And when we got to the Civic Center Inn, which is all boarded up, and of course JJ and Erica did a big story on that and saved the dog, who's doing great, by the way. That was horrific. There was I posted a picture of it, a bunch of people using drugs, sitting in couches. There was a pit bull off leash that was looking for garbage on the ground. There was people with little dogs that were off leash wandering into the street. Then we stumbled upon, a couple that I also posted a picture of who were selling drugs. They had a long line of people waiting to buy drugs. There was a immigrant mother with her two 2 small children. She had to go out into the street at 6 o'clock. It was getting dark. She had to go out into the street to avoid them. And the person I was with, who was a city hall official, said, their families walking by here. What are you doing? And one of the guys looked up and said, "Oh, I know you. You're a guy from City Hall." I mean, they just don't take it seriously at all. And so I've made this point so many times, and I'm just going to make it again. Until you start arresting for public use, nothing will change, because it's great that they arrested, a notorious drug dealer. You may recall my story that came long before the Chronicle, a year before the Chronicle went to Honduras, because I think they wanted to prove me wrong, but they proved it right. I did a story about the family that the guy was building a mansion and he was coming back and forth from Honduras, and I used the transcripts were federal, so I have pictures in the article of his marble tower and the mom saying to the uncle on a tapped line, "Oh, he's going to he's building a mansion there." So, this is not new. They come back and forth. They get deported. They come right back. So
this is guy like the big Niners fan. He is like
Yeah.
Niners all over his house.
Yeah, that, and also he was building a marble bathroom, and he has these columns. I think this is actually a different family because there's multiples. But this guy was notorious, and his mother was actually a bigger drug dealer. He was kind of her middleman, but he was building a mansion in Honduras, and the mother was bragging about it. And the sister, all of them got arrested and deported. The mother's in prison right now, but she'll be deported. Unless the feds are doing it, then I don't hold out a lot of hope, because if this woman goes through our court system, she will get out. So it's the only way to get rid of the dealers is federal, and they have to be deported. That's it. But there's just so many more of them waiting in the wings, that it's the way that other cities do it is that they just completely make it inhospitable to do drugs in public. And I've interviewed people in San Jose who flat out tell me they're leaving for San Francisco because they've been arrested 3 times and they're just tired of being, quote, harassed. And they go to San Francisco. And that's why you'll see JJ interview someone. "Where are you from?" "San Jose." "Why?" "Because drugs are cheaper and easier here, and I don't get arrested." Period.
Amazing.
So I would say until we do start to see a change, then I don't care who it's from, whatever politician, whatever city government official says they're going to do at this stage, it hasn't been done. Things haven't changed. They haven't improved. So I'm just not going to. I'm not as gullible as I used to be. That's for sure.
Okay, well, a couple of things that I wanted to mention going on at City Hall this coming week. It's a slow week because today is Veterans Day, by the way.
Oh, my dad was a vet.
So if there are anybody out there who are veterans, thank you for your service, although I'm sure you've heard that many times. But the big day seems to be Thursday, because the committees that normally meet on Monday and the full board of supervisors are not meeting this week, although the board has a special meeting for that SNAP backfill second reading, but that's it. But Thursday, the Public Safety and Neighborhood Services Committee is meeting, and they're going to be considering 3 bills that we've covered at least some of them in the past and are pretty important. There's Supervisor Sauter's bill on sideshows, increasing the penalties for participating in sideshows. There's Supervisor Sherrill's bill on increasing enforcement on drug activity near parks and schools.
Yeah.
And also the mayor has a bill about increases penalties for illegal vending. So that's all. Those 3 in one are happening on Thursday. People are concerned about housing. There's a planning commission going to be considering Supervisor Mahmood's bill about redefining it basically redefines the definition of households. Believe it or not, if you've got more than 5 roommates, I think right now, technically that's illegal.
Wait, what?
Technically, it violates the planning code if you have more than 5 roommates in your unit, wherever you are, even no matter how big it is.
Really?
And so this is something that.
What?
Yeah, I know. So.
What?
all those hacker hostels.
I know. What about the hacker mansions in Presidio Heights?
Exactly. So this is a bill that Mahmoud will use to fix that.
Weird.
Yeah. So
he's off his rails. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Oh my
One of these days, we're going to have to invite him onto Spaces.
Oh Lord.
See.
Well, I will tell you that when The Voice did interviews with all of the candidates on the John Rothman Daily Podcast, which, by the way, everybody should be tuning into. It's a short and really pithy, very informative bit of podcast with one of America's greatest broadcast journalists and political experts, which is John Rothman is a fifth generation San Franciscan. He's got a lot to say, and it's good. But when we had all of the candidates on, our producer Lynn Sloan booked them all. Bilal did come on, and everybody did pretty much except Jackie Fielder. But the only incumbent who agreed to come on, by the way, was Myrna Melgar, and I mean, I don't know what that says, but yeah, Bilal did come on the podcast. But now that he's in place, who knows?
And this time, 2 years from now, all those people are going to be gone except Myrna Melgar, I think.
That's an evil laugh.
I'm sorry. But no, Myrna's a survivor. She is the swing vote on the Board of Supervisors right now, along with Mandelman. And so I agree. It's interesting. It's interesting to see what she does. But yeah, I mean, and yeah, definitely listen to our podcasts with John Rothman. They are on Podbean as well as Apple Podcasts. So if you go to either Apple or Podbean and search Voice of San Francisco, you'll get them.
I listen in Waymo. You can listen in Waymo. They're on iHeart Radio, which is what Waymo uses.
You mentioned Waymo. We're going to have to talk about the Waymo thing that we promised not to talk about earlier.
Yes. I did interview the owner of Kit Kat, so I'm having to completely rewrite my story because it's a much different story than what everybody thinks.
Yeah, I know. That's the whole thing. I mean, it's just crazy what's happening there. But
I know.
I mentioned our podcasts are also at the bottom of our webpage.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean that's. You're going to see lots and lots of, commentary from us and documents from us and from other people about the craziness that is this insane, cat litter coin that's coming out and everything.
Yeah.
I just
I won't give
our streets, and they want to go crazy over a cat.
It's not really about a cat, can I just say? I mean, everybody knows there's no bigger animal advocate or lover than me. I'm probably the best known animal advocate in the media, period, in San Francisco. But I want to say flat out, it's about the cat for the owners. When I listen to their story, it's much more than people thought. The cat survived as long as it did because it was brought in every night, and this was one of two times it wasn't, and that's because the people who worked that night and they thought he was in and he had slipped out. But besides that, they went on their Instagram page just to let their many customers who loved the cat know what had happened, and Jackie Fielder got a hold of that. And let me just make this perfectly clear. Jackie Fielder doesn't care about the cat. It has nothing to do with the cat. The owners loved the cat. The community loved the cat. There are certain factions, the overlords in the union that control Jackie and who, she depends on to get to a higher office, God forbid. They are making this about Waymo. They don't care about the cat.
Well, it's also the Teamsters, right? Because they've had a long campaign against automated driving.
Yes, the Teamsters overlords that control Jackie Fielder. That's and can I just say, Jackie Fielder, in the future, can you please, I cannot stand when people use the term they've been disappeared. I mean, that's just the editor in me. I can't. It's not a word. I also can't stand that she referred to Kit Kat as having been unalived. The cat was killed, not unalived.
Well, I'm not defending use of that word, but you know where that comes from, right?
I don't.
Okay, well, basically, a lot of social media platforms, and this is again how stupid things are. They ban words like suicide.
Oh, right. You have to put a little asterisk in it.
So if you want to talk about a serious issue like suicide, even as in a conversation that would be beneficial, you can't use the word.
Oh, is that true though? Even in her video, would it catch it in a video?
Well, I don't know. It's not applicable in her case, but that's where it comes from.
Yeah. Well, she said it in a video.
Yeah, it comes mainly from YouTube.
Okay.
Where they will downgrade the advertising and views for your video if it has words in it like murder or suicide or sex abuse, even if you are talking about those things, in a public policy sense or historical sense or whatever.
All I know is when it came out, anything that comes out of her mouth for me is hard to swallow. No pun intended.
And also, there's been a lot of like socialist movements that have, historically driven major shifts in vernacular language, and that has a lot of political history, especially in Asia and so on, in Europe. It's a kind of elevating working class speech and coining new terms to, reflect kind of class struggle and systemic critique too. So there is that angle of why they're changing the vernacular.
I use the New York Times Style Guide, as does the Voice, and that's what I'm going by. And I'm sorry, but Kit Kat was killed. He wasn't unalived.
Exactly.
Exactly. So,
all right. Well, I got to get on the road because I'm doing working on a. I know sometimes you got to break up the depressing stuff with something more positive, but I'm working on a piece about traveling in Mendocino in the fall and winter, which is a beautiful, beautiful place. And did the first part a couple weeks ago, and now we're going second. Our producer, the Voice producer, Lynn Sloan, and I see her on here. Hi, Lynn. Are going to explore some more stuff in Mendocino, and then I will be writing about it.
Wonderful.
Sounds good.
Have a great week, everyone.
Yeah. Have a great week.
Yes.
Everyone have a great
Thank you.
Sunday. Thank you so much for participating.
Bye.